Homelessness, making things worse by helping. This model is repurposed from an article by David Peter Stroh and Michael Goodman, and it points out several interesting aspects of how we think about things, which I found, quite insightful, quite thought-provoking. So if we start with the situation of homeless people on the street, the most not most appropriate, but the most timely response that one can make to deal with that situation is to create shelters, which gets people off the street. Anytime there's a situation, there is typically at least two and sometimes more approaches to dealing with the situation. One of them short-term, timely, the other one longer term, which takes a lot more thought and a much greater investment. So in this case, there is a longer term solution which actually attempts to address the real underlying reasons for the homelessness, as opposed to simply treating the symptom of developing shelters and putting people in shelters. The difficulty with pursuing this approach is that it actually hides the problem in terms of the temporary shelter diminishes the visibility of homelessness. Homelessness, the level of homelessness is still there. It's just not as visible as it used to be. So it's not perceived to be the problem that it was, so that the perception that the critical services to actually eliminate the homelessness problem doesn't need to be solved. And so that you end up with a vicious reinforcing structure that moves you specifically in a direction that you don't want to go in. Additionally, there are, in other words, temporary shelters are not cheap. Somebody's funding this effort, and the funders are looking for short-term success. So the funders drive people to treat the symptoms of the situation, and therefore end up promoting competition amongst people who could be pursuing longer-term solutions, and we end up with another vicious reinforcing structure that fragments the funding and actually diminishes the likelihood that the long-term solution gets pursued. Additionally, there's the problem of the perception that comes with homeless people. It presents barriers to actually accommodate the homeless, and therefore difficulty in acquiring resources to deal with this problem, and we have another vicious reinforcing structure. What the model points out several things. One is a shifting the burden problem, where it's quite easy and timely to go ahead and treat the symptoms of the problem, but it doesn't actually deal with the causes of the situation. And how many times do you see us doing that on an ongoing basis? And typically, if you deal with the symptoms in a very effective manner, homeless people from other places will migrate to wherever you're building the shelters, so that the homeless problem in that particular area will actually get worse. And this part of the situation doesn't even get addressed. Though the other thing that this points out, or I hope points out, is that this simply is intended to identify the shortcomings of what happens when you actually attempt to address the symptoms of a problem, as opposed to the underlying sources of the symptoms themselves. And in that case, there actually isn't a generic model for dealing with the homelessness situation, because you can't address the situation without understanding the context. And people are homeless for very different reasons. It's because they became disabled and they couldn't make their mortgage payments, so they ended up getting laid off and they got evicted from their home, or a myriad of reasons. The industry that they were in shifted and laid off people so that there's just no opportunities in that arena anymore. Until we actually look at the reasons why people are homeless, so that we can address the basic underlying situation or cause for what's happening, we don't solve the problem. Simply building shelters and putting people in homes doesn't solve the problem. You have to find a way to make them sufficient, self-sufficient, so that they're no longer homeless. So hope you found this of some interest, and I'll see you in another Musing soon. Bye.